episode of Talk with me, Kamal Kaur. Today I'm delighted to welcome Amo and Mani to the studio today. Amo is the CEO of Disability Direct, and he's also been nominated. He's also one of the top 100 most influential disabled people in the UK. And Mani is a ghostwriter and published author. They've recently released their gripping debut novel, Walk Like a Man, which discusses important issues like disability, the stigma towards disability within our South Asian community, and also discusses men's mental health. Amo, Mani, welcome to the studio, and thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. So Amo, we'll start with you. So for any viewers who haven't read the book, what is the book about? And what made you tell your story now?
Okay, Walk Like a Man is it's basically the journey that I've had from a small child with a disability, from the Asian community, from a Sikh background, to present day almost, and some of the obstacles, barriers and stigmas that any disabled person from our community has, and basically the book captures some of the obstacles that I faced. So yeah, it's based over 3 decades, and it's an interesting relationship between the two characters. One based on me, the protagonist is called AJ. And then the other one, the counsellor, because in real life I was having secret counselling sessions that nobody knew about, even my family didn't know about. So this book basically captures the relationship between those two characters, but also AJ's relationship with the outside world as well.
Exactly, and how he, and how all these life events happen to you. So, was writing the story something that you always thought you would do growing up? Imagine you're a 10-year-old little boy, you're going back, those years ago, and did you ever think that you would ever get to this stage where you released your first book? And how does that make you feel?
No, as a child, you're just too busy being a child, and even as a teenager and adult, and even up to that moment where I decided to write the book, even then I was just too busy being me. It was only the people around me that said, "You've got such an interesting story. There's a whole cocktail of experiences that I've had, and you really need to capture it." And I was just, I don't really see anything fascinating about it. But it was only when we started putting pen to paper that I thought, oh gosh, right, okay, there is a story there. And no, it wasn't in my plan as a child. It wasn't in my plan at all. It was just the people that I surround myself with. They're some wonderful people. They all said, you need to get this down on paper for others.
Having read the book, I was gripped from the beginning. Like I was saying to you guys earlier, a couple of years ago I made it my aim to start reading lots and lots of autobiographies, just a different genre to what I normally read. Because the book is semi-autobiographical, and also you brought Mani on as a co-host, it's such an easy read, and it's so different to a standard autobiography. So there's elements in the book that really made me laugh, and there's elements in the book that made me cry, and there's elements in the book that makes me take stock of my own situation and how I behave in certain situations as well. So Mani, how was it? What made you decide to bring Mani on as a co-author?
Well, the story there is quite interesting. I actually wrote the first for 3 or 4 chapters. I can't even remember what point I got up to, and then I had a mental block. I just thought it sat on my shelf. Well, not my shelf. It was in my laptop for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then we went into lockdown. And I call it divine intervention or something. I was just on LinkedIn, and I'd never met Mani before in my life. Didn't know her at all, but she'd written a post about offering herself to write stories. I just had a good feeling when I read her post, and I reached out to her, and I don't normally do that. I just reached out and says, Manny, let's have a chat. And we did, and then the rest is
And that's
history.
how the connection was made.
Yeah.
So Manny, you know, you can tell through your work and the work that I've read of yours before, you are incredibly creative in your writing.
Thank you.
You're extremely talented. So when working with Amo, and it was his life that you were trying to put across, how did you work together to ensure that his story was told in the most authentically as possible?
Do you know, that's really fascinating. And when I look back now, we literally had conversations via Zoom for like, what, a year and a half?
Yeah, pretty much.
Since he sent me the first few chapters. When I put that post out to help people write, in my head I was thinking web copy, something to help people with their digital skills if they didn't know how to write for websites and things like that. And I'm like, well, this is where my skills can come in. I didn't even think about books until Amo came along and just sent me this little request. So I think lockdown was sort of a blessing in that sense, and we were forced to adapt to our situation, and it's made me think about how I now work with future clients and be able to record all our sessions. And Amo told me the vision for his book. He kind of had an idea. We had multiple different endings, some of which his wife disagreed to, so we had to work around those. We never had an end in sight until I think maybe 3/4 of the way through. We were sort of nearing the end, and I came up with this idea that Amo write something that came from him and set the scenario for him. But it didn't feel like an interview process, did it? It was just genuine conversation where the next part of the book was. And there's so much of his life that isn't in the book, or there were elements that are in the book that weren't originally planned to be in the book. And that all came through just normal conversation. I think the first time we met was like August 2020, like after working on it for a few months. And that was to really just fine tune what we've got so far and where the next stages were going to go. So for us, we were just talking every month or every few weeks.
That's great, and that's such a natural process that you guys followed, and your relationship then professionally developed, and you got an understanding of yourself. And sometimes if anyone came to me and said, all right, Cam, put your life down on paper, I would feel such a mind block as well. You know, I wouldn't be able to see the wood for the trees. And you bring someone on like Manny, who is incredibly talented, and she is able to put your thoughts in order, put a timeline in order, and no wonder you've created something that's so thought-provoking and powerful. So Manny, you've not always been an author or a writer, have you? Your background is very much in the corporate sector. So before all this started, what made you decide to become a writer?
Do you know what? I think subconsciously it's always been in the back of my head, because before anything, before studies, I would always have a book in my hand as a child, and I was really advanced for reading at like primary school level. I was always like 2 or 3 classes ahead, because I would rather read a book than I guess make friends in real life. The characters in the books became my friends, and when you feel like you don't really belong anywhere, it's almost an easy escape to go into, you know. And I didn't have any friends growing up, so that was just an easy thing for me. I would be that person that'd go to the library to get 7 books out every week, and I would read them within like 10 days and then go back again. Or, you know, go into a shop and get the 3 for 2, and my mum would just go ballistic. I'd be spending all when I got a job, I was spending all my money on books. And so, but my life was very corporate, as every Punjabi girl knows. Like, you know, creativity and arts and culture is not something that I grew up with, and I didn't have any role models, so who could I have asked? So reading for me was just a hobby. Mostly psychological thrillers and horrors, but that's more about my inner personality than anything else. So for me, it was just, I worked in sales, I worked in customer service, I worked in like software training, and about 7 years ago, I started writing a blog as an outlet for what I wanted to say about the world. Some of it was funny. Well, I thought it was funny because I think a lot of humour comes across in my posts, and then I started writing more serious topics, and it kind of got noticed. I did a bit of freelance here and there, and there's nothing like losing your job just before lockdown that really prioritises what you want to do with your life. And I thought, well, I moved from the north to Birmingham to be known as a writer, and I then went into corporate because I wasn't getting paid to be a writer. And I thought, well, I've been given all the time in the world now. I don't have a job. Everybody seems to be making everyone else redundant or furloughed. And there was like, what do I do? Do I go to like the nearest supermarket and get a job? But what do I really, really want to do? And I thought, if I don't do this now, when I've been given an opportunity with all this free time and no one to like really be responsible to in terms of an employer, then I'm never going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's when I put my post out saying, let me just make a little money on the side to get me through the next few months.
No, that's perfectly understandable. I'm sure loads of people at the beginning of lockdown were feeling like that. And in hindsight now, it was a blessing in disguise.
100%. Yeah.
And you were then kind of forced to pursue your passion.
Yeah.
And I think that's just incredible. So how long did the book take to write then, from initial meeting to what we have today?
I think it was about a year and a half, the whole process, wasn't it?
Yeah, we started talking in like May 2020. I think we wrapped around maybe the day before release, but
I mean, yeah,
about September. Yeah, we were pretty much up to the 11th hour with
11th hour
edits and stuff in October 2021, but the bulk of it had been written by September, maybe earlier.
Much, yeah.
So you are self-published
Yeah.
as well, aren't you? So what advice would you give to any viewers out there who also have a similar story or a story they want to share?
I think the interesting thing is, you know, as I started opening up to money and revealing elements of my life, I realized that everyone's got a story to tell, no matter how boring you think you've led a life. There are elements of the periods in your life where you have done something or influenced someone or been of use to someone that you don't realize you've made a difference to other people's lives, or other people's have made a difference to your life. And when you start capturing that, then you realize you've got a story to tell. And self-publishing was the preferred route for us, because there is, yes, we could have gone down the road of sending it to some of the well-known publishing bodies, but what we were told, advised at the time, was that could take years before it ended up in the shops. And
it's such a popular route that many authors are taking these days as well, because they can still keep in control of their story and their book's journey.
Yeah. And this is great. It's almost good for the planet as well, because you only print as per. It's available on Amazon, and it's only printed on demand.
Yeah.
So they don't print 1,000 copies and just wait for it to be sold. So you know, it's great that way as well.
During the process then, because was a completely new concept to you both, have you learnt anything surprising about yourselves?
The one thing, the one thing I learned, which I said to Manny partway through the book, and I didn't, you know, I, as an individual, have been surrounded from day one by very strong women. And they, to this day now, even when I look around my life now, when I look at people like mothers, wives, daughters, sisters, even the staff and management I have at work who work for me, they're all very strong female characters who, they're there, I lean on them a lot, and I didn't realize I do that. And I think that's one of the reasons the book is so popular with women. They've actually resonate with some of the characters in there, and so that was one thing I learned. And I didn't realise that I was just too busy living the life. But it's only when on paper, and that is something that a lot of people have actually said. Yeah, there's some really good, strong female characters in there.
One of my favourite characters in the book is Sonia.
Yeah.
Sonia is AJ's therapist, but she's also a good friend, isn't she? So I think it gives the viewers an insight in terms of what a therapy session is like, between if a man reaches out with mental health, he wants to talk about a situation. The relationship comes across very vulnerable but very real, and I love how Sonia guides him and steers him, and it's, you know, it's quite refreshing to see that. So, you know, what has the feedback been like from your close friends and family? Is anything that they thought, Amo, I didn't realise that this happened to you?
That is pretty much a lot of people have said, because as I said, these 3 decades of counselling, I never even told my wife. Nobody knew. But my friends, you know, they've said, we didn't realise you were burning on the inside. We didn't realise what was going on when comments were made or situations were happening around me and affecting me. My you know, my exterior, just the brick wall came up and nobody knew what I was going through. And they all recognise it now that, gosh, yeah, you were like that at that time, but we didn't know. And the interesting thing as well is, you know, some of my closest friends are now talking to me about subjects which they probably wouldn't have never talked about. You know, so, you know, talking about disability, talking about mental health, and that was my key message. You know, our community shouldn't be afraid of talking like that.
And you created that safe space with what you've produced. Manu, have you found, you know, has your feedback been like as your first ever debut novel?
Yeah, I think the same in terms of they're thinking about people with disabilities differently. It's been a real eye-opener for them. How easy it is to read, which as an author is great, and how some people have like literally read it in a day. And I'm that reader. Like, if a book has gripped me, then I will literally do nothing else until I finish that book. So that really warms my heart as an author as well. And I think the fact that it's just short, sharp, sweet, and there are elements of humour to it, and there's sadness and there's inspiration, and you're left feeling a little inspired by the end of it, and also reflective of the community, not just the South Asian community, but those with disabilities, which has probably been more so highlighted in the last 2 years since the pandemic, and how much they are not catered for. So I think this book sort of was done at the right time in terms of what we were going through globally as well. And the other interesting element, particularly with Sonia, is, and you've said this many a time, Ammo, I know they called you AJ then, Ammo, is Sonia is fake. She's a completely made-up character, so I got a bit of artistic license with her backstory, her journey, and all of that, and that was exciting for me as a creative person. But because we were having almost like these monthly or fortnightly Zooms, depending on my schedule and how demanding he can be, it ended up being his own therapy, like talking to me and releasing his story and going, because some of the stuff that he's gone through is quite painful, right? And you've said this before, haven't you, that our relationship we've ended up friends, and our relationship mirrored that of AJ. Not that I'm a licensed therapist, but they're talking about it.
Sonia and AJ, the two characters, have a lot of banter, a lot of agreements and disagreements, and we found, you know, within 1 or 2 sessions we were having a go at each other, and that I found that healthy. Because, you know, as two people who wanted to get their thoughts on paper, we needed that openness and honesty. And Mani's right. With the weekly Zoom sessions where she'd say, right, tell me what happened. And I'd recall it. As soon as we'd click the end button and she'd go her own way, I'd be sitting there like this, just thinking about what had happened again, because I'd just relived it again. Some of these stories I hadn't talked about with anyone for years. And then they were just there again and refresh, and then I'd have to switch off and go sitting in the living room with my kids and try and have a normal conversation again whilst it was still buzzing fresh in my head.
And that just shows the importance of discussing, you know, and just even talking to somebody about how your day is, what's on your mind. Do you both think that enough is being done in our South Asia community to tackle disability stigma and be there for our male generation?
I think our community, the Indian community, the Sikh community, the South Asian community as a whole, has still got a long journey ahead of itself. The disability is still a subject which is shoved in the corner and only talked about when it happens immediately in the family. And even then, there's normally a very out-of-date set of rules and principles applied if a member of the family has a disability, you know. And some of that is simply because our generation, you know, back in India, disabled people were pretty much
ostracized.
They were just left in the corner, or they were out on the streets begging. That's what you saw disabled people doing. I remember, you know, going to India in '98 with my dad. After last time I went before that was a small child, but then the first thing relatives came up to me and actually asked my dad, can he talk? There was that mentality that as a disabled person, maybe I'm just not there. And to this day, I see it frustrates me that our community has got a long way. And there's a part in the book where I'm sitting, where the character is sitting in a room with about 6 or 7 aunties, and the story of reincarnation comes up, and yes, you're disabled because you did something wrong in your last life. And that mentality is still there, and that's unlikely to change for a long time. And that's got to change. And even in our own, this is a Sikh channel, and this is a message to all the Gurdwaras out there. Even in our own community, you get a lot of the Sikh temples where disabled people are asked to sit at the back on the benches because they can't sit on the floor. And there's one temple where disabled people are sitting outside and not in the main, the main hall. And that kind of that mentality is still there. There's a long way to go, and it's going to take, hopefully, books like this, and hopefully many other disabled people feel the confidence to put their story down and then say, I'm going through this too. And that's what a lot of people have said to me.
Yeah, as a culture, we rely on gift giving, and what do we buy the men in our life. Then I would say to the viewers, if you haven't already bought this book for yourself, number one, buy it for yourselves. Secondly, buy it for your family members and buy it for your close friends as a gift. The more exposure that we're giving to people on content like this, we're giving them more leeway and empowering them with more knowledge of what society, and that's how society will change. So what are the next steps? I don't want you to both now to shake hands and just set off into the sunset separately. I actually see this developing into a film or a Netflix series or a radio piece. And I know an army of women behind us who want to see this develop into something else. Do you have anything to share?
Someone did say to me, you really need to put, this needs to be turned into a film or a mini-series, because there, as you said earlier, there are elements of sadness, horror and laughter in there. And so I don't know where it could go. At the moment I'm just pleased people are reading it. If it turns into something else, then great. That's not my end goal, but if it happens, then great. I don't know what Manny's thoughts are.
I think for us it was just a case of let's get the story out there and see how it goes. Do I see it being turned into something else? Yeah, absolutely I do. So Power of Manifestation, obviously, it's going to be a Netflix series. But I think at the heart of it is just a story of a man, and just because he's been, just because he has a disability doesn't mean he can't go on to achieve great things. Yes, there are some elements in the book that touch upon disability and how people in the South Asian community are treated, and also mental health. But there's a lot of humour in there, and there's it's just a story of a man at the end of the day, regardless, strip everything else away. It's just the story of one man's journey who was basically written off from a young age and thought, you know what, I'm going to prove you all wrong. And essentially that's the crux of it, regardless of what obstacles came in his way.
It's as simple as that, isn't it? Yeah. The man, it could be a family member, a close friend, and it is just telling a real life documentation of their life. So I know you have a background as a Bhangra singer.
Oh gosh.
I'm not going to ask you to do any Bhangra for us now, but I would like you to perform an extract of your book for the viewers, if possible.
Okay.
Just so they can get a taste of, how it's written and a bit of the story to intrigue them a bit more.
Sure.
Are you happy to do so?
Okay, I'll try my best.
So you just want to say which chapter you want to read?
So we'll go with, if I can find it. Chapter 5, 3 Little Girls it's called. AJ was in 2 minds about the second session with Dr. Khan, and had reversed his decision 6 times before arriving at a clinic the following week. The last session had been draining. and he wasn't keen to repeat the process. "Come on through," she motioned. "How have you been since our last session?" He didn't want to say out loud how he was really feeling, like he constantly had a dark cloud following him and could feel the rain hitting him even when it was blazing hot outside. To describe that out loud with your chest tightening when you were in a haze of mist and darkness was not a conversation he wanted to have with anyone. He hesitated. "I'm okay. I wasn't going to come, you know." She nodded. She could empathize with how hard these sessions can be, especially for young men who aren't accustomed to therapy and talking about how they feel. It was still rare to have men attend the sessions, especially those from ethnic minority backgrounds. Her field of work was unorthodox, even for her family.
Wonderful. And I'm sure that hopefully that's given the readers, the viewers, who are going to become readers, an insight into how riveting the book is. So Mani, Amo, do you have any last messages that you want to give, at least just for today, to the viewers at home? Obviously, buy the book, buy it for your relatives. And Mani, do you want to sum up?
I think I just want more people to read, and particularly from the South Asian community, and we need more of our stories to be told, which is why I set up as a ghostwriter, because if you don't have the time or the inclination to write yourself, I believe everybody in the world can write, we just doubt ourselves. That's where I can come in and, yeah, bring those stories to life. We need more of our voices heard through the written word.
Absolutely, absolutely, completely agree. And Emma?
From me, the thing is, yes, I want people to buy the book, wouldn't that be great? But for me more, it's about the messages in this book, many messages, but one of the main messages is be nice to each other, and be careful what's being said around children particularly, because words that are said around children, they manifest and they grow up, and before you realise it, you've shaped an opinion in a child's head which is going to affect that child growing up throughout life. And that certainly was the case for me. And you know, as I say, if we can just have a think when we're all talking, if there's people in the room, are we affecting anyone? Yeah. And that is one of my key kind of messages.
Two powerful messages there. I think we can talk about this forever, and I want to pick up the book and read it again. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you both coming in and taking time out of your really busy schedules. But we'd hope to get you back on the show at a later date so we can talk about the next stage of your journey, because I really don't think it's going to end here.
Thanks, Cam.
I hope you all enjoyed today's show with Amo and Mani. The book Walk Like a Man is still available now to buy on Amazon. Please buy a copy, read it, enjoy it, and above all, keep spreading the message out there. Thank you for watching.